Destroying idolatry. That's our topic today. It's based on a commentary from today's Aliyah from the Torah portion, Matot-Masei, looking at a directive that we are given as we are about to enter into the promised land. We're told that we have to destroy idolatry. We have to break down and tear down the idols. And naturally, you can imagine we can look at that in our own personal walk and our own personal life and discuss that and what that might look like for all of us individually. And I'm going to begin by talking about the idolatry of ideas. Sometimes we have ideas that have formulated in our minds and in our hearts that are that we've set up as idols, religious concepts. It's a bit of a stretch, maybe, but I'm going to suggest that sometimes that we have these preconceived ideas and we don't want to let them go, even when we're confronted with reality, because they've become, to a large extent, idols in our life. We have built up our religious temples around them. And if that idol comes down, then our temple collapses, or at the very least, our temple has no relevance. Sometimes we refer to this in religious circles as sacred cows. This is the same thing when somebody says, "Hey, you've killed a sacred cow this morning." When we have confronted a religious idea that is not, has been invalidated, you say, "Hey, you've slaughtered the sacred cow." What is that a reference to? Actually, it's a reference, of course, to the golden calf, the idol. And so, very much our religious ideas can be idolatrous. So we'll be leading off with that. But before I say that, good morning. Glad you're here. Please be sure and subscribe to our channel. Like this video. By the way, we've had an uptick, a significant uptick in subscribers in the last week. I've noticed, and that's amazing. That's great. Thank you so much for that. If you have subscribed recently, then we bless you and thank you so much for coming. Once again, we discover that we have people who have been watching us for years, and they're just now letting us know, and that's awesome as well. So if you're out there and you've been watching for a year or two or three or so forth, thank you for being here. You may not be somebody who chats, you may not comment, we may not even know your name, but we're glad you're here, and we would like to get to know you, and that would be fantastic to do that. So glad you're here. By the way, we have we're in the middle of the 3 weeks, but at the end of the 3 weeks, we have Tu B'Av, which is sometimes a little known holiday. I've done a teaching on it. It is actually a significant holiday. It's a minor holiday. It's not a Yom Tov or anything like that, but it's a celebration day. Let me say that. But I've done a teaching on it. There's actually quite a bit of significance to it. It's coming up in August, and it's a really great event. You might a reason I'm saying this is you might consider, if you say, "Wow, I was thinking about visiting Fort Worth, Texas," which is where we're located. Sometimes I forget to say that because I just we're located in Fort Worth, Texas. For those of you who are watching, you're wondering, where are these people located? Are they in France? Are they in faraway Tokyo? And we're in Fort Worth, Texas. You probably guessed we weren't in Tokyo. But in any case, we would like to have you there. It's a great time, great event. You might want to come in and celebrate it. You can learn more about it by going to lapidjudaism.org, lapidjudaism.org, and look at our upcoming events. So the last couple of 3 mornings, I have been mentioning the Pharisees and how they were beloved by the people, and how Yeshua is a Pharisee. I've talked about this. And there have been some, at least one or two, who are dismayed by that. People push back against it, and I completely understand. I empathize and sympathize with the dismay. This is one of those theological idols. This is one of those sacred cows, and it's a significant sacred cow. The idea that the Pharisees are the enemy of the Messiah, that they're the despicable Jews that Messiah came to war against, is very much an ingrained idea in the minds of Christians. Okay, and the idea that you would have to take down that sacred cow and say, well, actually, let me rethink that. As it turns out, A, they're not the villains. B, Messiah is one of them. That significantly changes pretty much everything. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Now, listen, the reason that I talk about it so much is twofold. To a lesser degree, as many of you know, you've been around here for a little while, I am really, 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 really fond of things that are real. I very much dislike making stuff up. Okay. And just so you know, my personality is such, pardon me, that even when I am putting down in my notes or writing down in a article a theological concept that I know is correct, that I mean I will actually go and look it up again just to double check myself. I mean, I'm just saying that, this is how important it is for me not to make stuff up. It has to have a source. It has to be reality. So I'm very much, and another part of me is, because I'm a lover of history. I'm not, I'm not saying I'm the genius of history, but I do love history. It always have. It's the only subject when I was in school I got straight A's in. I just love it. And therefore it's important to me that history be factual, that we don't rewrite history, we don't make up history. It's really, really important to me that we don't do that, and nothing good ever happens with that. And there's a lot of rewriting of history and our culture to our detriment. And the biggest reason, though, aside from those things, the biggest reason why I talk about this topic is because knowing the truth about the Pharisees and the fact that A, they weren't the enemy, B, the people absolutely loved them more than anybody else, and C, Yeshua was absolutely, it is indisputable, he absolutely was a Pharisee. The Bible says it explicitly. These facts, knowing these facts, will liberate you. It will set you free from a religious spirit. It will set you free from anti-Semitism. It will set you free from false teachings. I mean, come on. We're talking here about your soul. Don't you want to get it right? Aren't you interested in truth? We're talking here, guys, about divine issues. Doesn't it matter that it's real? Somebody wrote in, and listen, I appreciate their question, and I'm glad to be the person to help answer it. They disagreed with me about the fact that people love the Pharisees, and I had to tell this person, and I'm glad they wrote in. And I'm telling you because many people, you may be thinking the same thing, but you haven't written the comment, and that's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, these are historical facts. It's not my opinion that the people love the Pharisees. Josephus, the first century historian, writes about it. Many scholars have discussed it. This is the idolatry part of it. The idolatry we have to break down sometimes as the idols of our religious ideas. It's not helpful. We've built temples around the idea that the Judaism is the enemy. It's not. Yeshua did not come to fight against Judaism. He is a Jew who practiced Judaism. He was a Pharisee. He did not come to create a new religion. He did not come to make Jews Gentiles. He did not come to rebuke, quote, man-made traditions or whatever nonsense. He came to destroy the works of the Satan. That is not biblical Judaism. The Satan would love for you to get your eyes focused on the Pharisees of the enemy, even though Yeshua explicitly said they're not the ones who are sick. Why? Because the Satan would very much like for you to lose your focus, miss the target. Shoot that guy over there, not me. So what did the Satan do? He created an entire religion that makes Rome the good guys, which makes idolatry the good guys. To the extent now that Christians have idols in their house, Christmas tree, Easter egg. They worship, can we just be honest here? They worship and teach their children to worship false gods. They have their children write cute little letters to Santa Claus asking him for things. Who's Santa? Do you know? Saint Nicholas. No, guys, that's made up history. That's fake. Santa Claus is Saint Nicholas. That is a history that was created by Christians to justify using Santa Claus. Who's Santa Claus? Santa Claus is the Nordic god Odin. Yes. Father of Thor, god of the Vikings. So therefore, when we teach our children to write little cute letters to Santa Claus, and Santa Claus gives them their stuff, then we are teaching our children to pray to Odin. What's Easter? Who's Easter? The goddess Astara, who, by the way, used to have sunrise worship services. Did you know that? It's fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. People used to gather. How could you make this up? People used to gather and have sunrise services to worship the goddess Astara, who had a little pal bunny that used to lay eggs because before it was a bunny rabbit, it was a bird. She turned into a bunny. And so now when you have this sunrise service, you're thinking, oh, this is great. Can you imagine when Peter and John used to do this? And they used to hold their little chocolate rabbit and used to go on Easter egg hunts. You see what I'm saying? It's time to cut down on the sacred cows. Okay, before I move on, I wanted to recommend a couple of books. Okay. Now, these books are very, very, very Christian friendly, meaning that they're good introductory works for people who are coming out of the church, which is many, thank God. And by the way, Zakin Yagal had a great idea. I'm going to do a teaching, Bezrat Hashem, soon and very soon. And the teaching is going to be, you can leave Christianity without leaving Messiah. You can leave Christianity without leaving Messiah. I'm going to work on that. But in any case, there are two books I want to recommend. I've had both since about 2000, probably 8 or 9. And these are both written by a Christian theologian. So just keep that in mind. He is definitely Christian, but He has an excellent understanding of Judaism and Jewish thought. It's Dr. Brad Young. Now I'm gonna hold the book up, but I've had this book for a long time, so it's kind of well used. This one, oh, there's Meet the Rabbis. Meet the Rabbis by Dr. Brad Young. I'm gonna read a couple of quotes from here, so that you guys out there that are fairly new, you won't think that I'm crazy. Because when I say things like the Pharisees were not the enemy, and basically all the propaganda related to them is all falsehood, people are like, "What? My whole life, I've been taught that Yeshua came to war against the Pharisees." I know. I get it. I understand. I empathize. It's like finding out the Joker is a good guy and Batman and Robin have been wrong the whole time. It's your whole life is a lie. But seriously, Dr. Brad, it's a good introductory work. It's actually very good, but I say introductory because Dr. Young is a Christian. I just keep that in mind. The other one that's also good, I wish that he would have used the Messiah's actual name, but it is what it is Jesus, the Jewish theologian, also by Dr. Brad Young. Again, these are great introductory works, and these might be good works that you might want to purchase and give to your Christian friends, because these two books turn on its head this idea that the Pharisees are evil, or that the Messiah is not one of them, because he absolutely was. By the way, the book of John, I've said this so many times, I feel like I'm like a broken record, but it says explicitly that he's from among the Pharisees. Okay. So anyway, these are two good books. Now I want to read a couple of quotes so that you understand what it is I'm talking about. Okay. It says, in Christian literature, including academic writings, I often encounter a prejudicial attitude towards Judaism. The prejudice is usually directed at the Pharisees and their spiritual successors, the rabbis, in the form of sweeping generalizations. That's very true. He goes, another quote, a more accurate understanding of Jewish teachings from the time of the ancient rabbis makes the message of the Gospels come alive with renewed vigor. Boy, that's true. This is why we teach rabbinic Judaism. We practice rabbinic Judaism. But what I'm saying is we teach rabbinic Judaism here. We utilize ancient Jewish sources because it makes the Gospels make sense and makes them come alive. I'm gonna say something rather bold. Not that that's uncommon, but I'm going to suggest that if you're not studying the Midrash and the Talmud and the Zohar, yes, the Zohar. Say it like that. Ready? Everybody ready? Take a drink of coffee, clear your throat, all together. The Zohar. Now, do the Count Dracula thing with me, or not the Count Dracula, the Count from Sesame Street. Ready? You like that? Okay. All right. But seriously, I'm going to suggest that if you're not studying these things, then there's no way you can understand Yeshua's message. You just can't. Because frankly, many of the parables have similar parables, if not nearly exact, in these rabbinic writings. And if you don't understand them, then you're not going to get what he's trying to say. So another quote, I want to suggest, Dr. Young writes, that this characterization of the Pharisees, let me back up. I'm sorry. Let me back up. Okay. Modern Christians, he writes, however, have been exposed to an environment, namely churches, where the Pharisees have been traditionally labeled as legalists of the worst order. In preaching and Sunday school lessons, the Pharisees play the lead antagonist to Jesus, he writes. I want to suggest, Dr. Young, that this characterization of the Pharisees is not only unfair, but is also historically inaccurate. He goes on to talk about the fact that the Pharisees were the ones that that looked for ways to make Torah observance easy for the masses. And that, by the way, is an historical fact. Our daughter Hadassah is always saying, you always say historical fact. Well, the reason I do is because I want to emphasize the reality that what I'm saying is not my opinion. And it's not. If and when I have an opinion, I tell you this is my opinion. But I want to overemphasize, because we live in a world where people just make stuff up all the time. I want to overemphasize that what I tell you comes from actual sources. It's not just me waking up one morning and going, I think it seems to me that, as I was reading in my NIV Bible this morning, that's not how I operate. One more quote here. The fact that Messiah singles out the Pharisees and calls upon them specifically for a fresh spiritual awakening of holiness. In other words, he's talking about rebuking them. That flows from the inside as well as an outwardly one, means that the Messiah was close to the Pharisees in teaching and practice. So this is just a few quotes from Dr. Young's book, Meet the Rabbis. Again, if it's a great introductory, these are great introductory books. It will help you smash the idol of Jew hatred. Yes, Jew hatred, because this whole hate the Pharisees thing is ultimately an anti-Semitic Jew hatred. That's what it is, guys. By the way, another historical fact. I know we're spending a lot of time on this morning, but hey, it's important. Guys, the Pharisees were not the ones who turned Yeshua over to the Romans. It was the Sadducees. Caiaphas was not a Pharisee, was a Sadducee. The real villains, ladies and gentlemen, if there are Jewish villains, are the Sadducees. And the Sadducees were Roman sellouts. They were Roman puppets, which means that the real villain, shocker, is Rome. You see? It's the Sadducees, okay? So these are just sacred cows we're slaughtering. And when you destroy the idol, your temple becomes irrelevant. Don't be afraid. We talked yesterday about change. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid of change. If you have spent a lifetime, maybe let's say 20 years, believing that the Pharisees were the wicked, evil ones and Yeshua just couldn't help but destroy them and create a brand new religion to replace them, that's a lie. It's a falsehood. Don't be afraid to throw that out. And don't be ashamed that you've believed it. You couldn't help it. Listen, you're brainwashed. Chinese water torture. It's not your fault. Be brave. Bravery embraces truth. Bravery, when it sees falsehood, it smashes it. Courage is somebody who sees the truth and runs with it, even when it's not popular. Don't be afraid. It's going to set you free. Now, naturally, we have to destroy idolatry in general. We're not supposed to incorporate it. Biblically, the idea that we're supposed to redeem idolatry and somehow incorporate it into our religious life is A, absurd, B, absolutely contrary to everything God has ever said about it. So, therefore, the idea that we would take obviously pagan service. Now, listen to me. If you're a Christian watching this program and you're starting to become disillusioned with Christianity because you go there week after week and you hear the same thing over and over and over again, and you're thinking to yourself, there's got to be something more. I just feel, what's going on? Don't worry, by the way, many hundreds, if not thousands, have felt the same way, which is why they're here. And there is something more, okay? How many of you are tired of, can you imagine? Like you go to the kiddie pool, it's ankle deep water, and it's got a nice little thing that sprays in your face. And you're thinking to yourself, this is the ocean. This is the depths, pun intended, of my spiritual life. the kiddie pool. I sit in ankle deep water with my little bucket, and I take the water and I pour it over my head, and I think, this is the sea of truth. And then one day, a Jew takes you by the hand, and you're overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and he says, "Welcome to Torah." And you're like, "What? This is biblical truth?" Yep. I thought the kiddie pool down the street. Yeah, no. I know it's a shocker. But listen, the idea that we would take pagan holidays like Christmas and Easter and Halloween and other things, what's the other one? New Year's Day, Valentine's Day. Yes, they're pagan. Not all holiday, like Thanksgiving's not pagan, 4th of July is not pagan. French Independence Day, whatever that is, or Canadian Independence Day, whatever that is not pagan. Okay. I'm talking about holidays that actually are pagan. Okay. We're not nutcases here. We actually do make distinctions. The idea that we would take those in and try to like make them godly things is foolish, because it doesn't lead to that. What does it lead to? It leads to our kids praying to Odin. Isn't that great? Hey, little Johnny, did you ask Odin for your new car, your new little race car? I did, and he answered my prayer. Great. Remember, there's only one God. Anyway, so your pastor, by the way, if you're a Christian, your pastor knows that Christmas is pagan. Everybody knows it. In fact, it's so well known, it's joked about on sitcoms like The Big Bang Theory. Yeah, it's so well known. It was part of their skit one time. This is not stuff that is like kooky and weird. All you just go to like the Encyclopedia Britannica and look it up. Everybody knows it. So why do we do it? Well, it's because Christianity is Roman, and the Romans were pagans. And so when they created the Christian religion, they naturally made it pagan, because that's who they are. The lithograph of Jesus with a little halo around his head, that is the lithograph, again, a historical fact, of Sol Invictus, the Roman sun god, the patron deity of Constantine. So every time you look at that and go, oh, look, JC. In fact, you're looking at a Roman sun god deity. Yeah. So you see, we have to destroy idolatry. The Bible tells us that God tells us that we have to destroy idolatry. We're not allowed to have it in our life, period. We are not allowed to benefit from it in any way. You couldn't even be Jewish and own a Christmas store. You couldn't sell Christmas decorations to make a living, as an example. You're not allowed to have a Christmas tree in your house. You're not allowed to have a Easter bunny in your house. You're not allowed to do any of that stuff. You're not allowed to have a little Buddha in your house. Okay, we have to destroy idolatry. Let me read this commentary, because this all comes, by the way. I know we've been talking about these concepts, but the Torah portion today mentions in chapter 33 and verse 52, you must. Let me see, where am I right? Let me back up here. Talking about when we cross over into the promised land, where it says opposite Jericho. Rabbi and I, were just there last May, in that vicinity. It says you'll say to the Israelites and say to them, when you cross over the Jordan into Canaan, you must drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, and you must destroy all of their temples, destroy their molten idols, and demolish their sacrificial platforms. I'm sorry. Did it say that when we cross the Jordan, that we're supposed to take their idolatrous temples, their idolatrous idols, their idolatrous platforms, and incorporate them into our Judaic worship? Are we supposed to take their holidays and, do some type of magic voodoo and turn them into now Torah-true holidays? Is that what we're supposed to do? No, it says we're actually supposed to destroy them, not have anything to do with them. But okay, but what if we say to God, you know how you said destroy them? Well, I got to thinking about it, and it's a nice idol. Uh, Once I got to looking at the idol, I thought it's made of silver. It's got some gold accents. It's actually kind of cute. Who doesn't like elephants? So my thought was, instead of destroying it like you said, because sometimes you say things and I'm thinking to myself, you may be saying it but not actually meaning it, like when you said destroy, you might be thinking like in a spiritual way, like circumcise your heart kind of a thing. So I'm thinking to myself, surely he doesn't hate elephants. I mean, come on. And surely he doesn't like, silver is a good thing, the cute little gold accents. And the elephant's got a bow tie. It's kind of nice. And so here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking to myself, I can take this idol. It's no longer an idol. I'm not going to worship it. Are you crazy? I'm going to take it and I'm going to actually create a holiday or incorporate it into a holiday that God has. And now, the nice thing about that is now the elephant is no longer evil. It's now good. It's a good elephant. It's like a Dumbo. How did that work out for King Saul? Anybody want to? But that's what we do, right? And we justify it and say, no, look. And here's my thought process, God. I know you should have asked me before you wrote the Torah, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Now we're learning. So you should ask me before, but listen, here's my idea. My idea is if I take this idol, the elephant guy, and I make it into now a godly idol. Now all the people who used to worship Mr. Elephant will worship you. You see how brilliant this is? Of course, does that happen? No. What ends up happening? And by the way, I keep saying the elephant. It's that's just, there's all kinds of idols. Some of them look like fish. So is that what happens? No, ends up happening. We end up worshiping them and forgetting God. By the way, who were the little anybody know the elves, the cute little elves, Santa Claus's little elves? Anybody done any history on that to see what or who the elves were? Anybody read any old sources that talk about the elves and who or what they actually were? Gnomes? No. Shoshana Keith, you're pretty much on target there. They're demons. The elves were demons. There's actually a writing and I have an 1861 publication, first original print, that talks about the celebration of Christmas in England, which back then was outlawed because of its paganism. And they used to have these parades, and Santa Claus, Odin, would dance down the street, usually drunk. And he would have dancing around him these little demons known as mischief and mayhem and mince pie and other weird names. And they were little demonic elves. Hence the pointed ears. So when you teach little Johnny and little Susie, who made your little toy, little Susie? The little elves made them. Great. So the god Odin gave you your prayer request and he sent you a product made by demons. Isn't this nice? So you see the problem here. We have to, God tells us to destroy the idols, to smash them. What's the end result? Look at Christianity today. Is Christianity biblical? No. It's just not. Christians today are clueless. You start talking to them about Passover, actual biblical holidays, and they're like, "What? This is amazing. How come we don't do this?" You start talking about Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Shavuot, for that matter, Hanukkah or Purim, and they're thinking to themselves, "How come our holidays aren't biblical? Like Purim, are you kidding me right now? We get to dress up and read the book of Esther and talk about God. How come we don't do that at church? How come Christians, the ones who actually love God, are sitting there on Easter and yeah, they're somewhat enjoying the emotionalism, but they're thinking to themselves, okay, okay, so how does I'm watching the Passion Play and I don't see any eggs or Easter bunnies. What? So how does this work? And so the problem is it doesn't. We have to destroy idolatry in our life of all kinds, literal idolatry. And we also have to destroy the idolatrous thoughts that we have, even when they are shrouded in religious concepts. Because anything that's fake will naturally lead you away from that which is real. Anything that is fake will naturally lead you away from that which is real. When we make up history, as an example, when we rewrite history and make it up and create fake history, well, then naturally we're not learning the lessons of history. And therefore we're just going to repeat it again. So again, let me just read this to you. You must destroy. This will be our last insight for today. Hopefully this has been fun and helpful and inspiring. The Hebrew term for idolatry is avodah zarah, which literally means foreign worship. Thus, any type of worship, any type of servitude that is foreign to the divine side of our personalities is a subtle form of idolatry. This is so important. If anything that is opposite or opposed to Torah-true Judaism is idolatry, and where it's not allowed. If it's not found in the scripture, it's not allowed. Now, again, I want to emphasize, because we're not nutcases, we're not talking here about national holidays. Please don't be a nutcase and suggest that you can't celebrate July 4th, or you can't celebrate Memorial Day, or you can't celebrate Israeli Independence Day, or or any national holiday. We have a few here in the United States. There are others in other countries. We're not nutcases. We're talking about holidays that actually have, and not just holidays, by the way. There's lots of other idolatry, but we're just at the moment we're talking about holidays. We're talking about things that actually have legitimate pagan origins. Okay. And many of these, by the way, are still today practiced by pagans and witches, such as Christmas and Easter and Halloween, to be sure. Those guys, did you know that witches actually have Christmas trees, and they look just like the one you used to have in your house? Yeah, look it up. It's fascinating. The object of our foreign worship can be anything from money, success, control, celebrities, even to more innocent idols such as security, wisdom, or health. Any object or goal to which we devote ourselves, not intending for it to help us accomplish our divine mission, qualifies as foreign worship. So anything can be idolatrous in our life. It can become idolatrous in our life. And we have to guard against those things. For our own good, God desires our undivided loyalty. He wants to spare us the pain and trauma of trying to serve multiple masters. When we learn to orient even our most mundane activities towards divinity so that every part of our lives becomes part of our divine mission, we can live free of the inner conflicts that unfortunately take our toll on the spiritual and mental health of too many people. It therefore is crucial that we become spiritual warriors, rooting out and destroying our inner idols in order to enter the promised land of wholesome, divine-oriented living. Amen to that. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being willing to challenge preconceived ideas. Thank you for being spiritual warriors. Please like this video, share it with all of your friends. It's very important. Things that are discussed here today, we approach them from a humorous point of view, but really it does set people free, and that is the point. So thank you for that. God love you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We will have a Musar today from the Rebbe scene. Yay. So be looking for that around about noon Central Standard Time. Shalom Aleichem. Look forward to seeing you, well, later today, and then, of course, mañana.